one of the gems of Vineyard Movement, of the worship community, is that it really is, it's just like this community of people that love each other. They want to serve their churches. They want to write songs. They want to write good songs. They want to get along. From my experience, is that what the Vineyard has with its worship community is a group of people who all want to go somewhere, and they all want to go somewhere together. That's unique, especially in a world where everybody's after that top 10 CCLI market. The Vineyard has it just has this group of people, and it really is a legacy. It's something that when you talk about young people, we need to bring them into that and point it out to them. It's not a clique, it's not a cult, there's not insiders and outsiders. This is like a family, I think needs to be carried on in our movement is that. This is really good. And you don't get this everywhere.
The Ferment. You're listening to the Ferment podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is well-known worship leader and songwriter John Barnett, best known for his songs Holy and Anointed One and Father of Lights.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at worshipteam.com. Worshipteam.com comes preloaded with over 12,000 songs, with new songs being added all the time. Hillsong, Bethel, Vineyard, Six Steps, Jesus Culture, just to name a few. Service building with Worship Team is a snap, and all the songs are completely legal and licensed. You can also find them on social media, Facebook at worshipteam.com, Twitter at worshipteam, Instagram at worshipteam_WT. Visit them at worshipteam.com for a free trial today. Complete worship planning with thousands of songs, easy interface, mobile apps, and legal rights for your church. All you need in one place, worshipteam.com.
What's up, John Barnett?
Another day in paradise, lockdown, day 285.
Man, and it's had an amazing effect on your beard. I just want to say that right up front.
Well, yeah, it's the grandkids Mr. Bubble cream rinse combo. Makes it soft.
Well, I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you on the podcast, just because I wanted it documented, I wanted to know how are Hank and Whiskey?
They're doing good. They're doing good. I was telling you earlier about my adventure out in the tent last night, and Whiskey's an outside dog. He likes to sleep outside, so he showed up all soaking wet, wanted in for a while, but yeah, they're doing good. They're still, keeping an eye on things, no intruders on the compound. And
that's right. Well, I had to ask because you never know if one of them were going to get into trouble with a bear, right?
Yeah. I haven't seen one in a while.
That was my next question is, have you seen any bears lately? Are they awake yet?
Oh yeah. They're awake. They're up and around. In fact, saw on the news some guy was hunting for elk sheds in Wyoming, and a grizzly tangled with him. And
yeah, that's why you don't go out alone up in the North Woods where you live.
Yeah, they have a some kind of internet site thing going, neighborhood watch thing or whatever here, and they're always seeing mountain lions.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah. John, lately I like to start these podcasts with a few just quick hitters, just for fun. Nothing hard up front. We'll maybe go to difficult questions later. So a few yes or no, either ors here. Number one, John Deere or Kubota?
What size tractor?
I don't know. I'm just saying John Deere or Kubota.
Big agricultural tractor, John Deere. Medium size, small homestead tractor, Kubota.
Good answer. That's really wise. Okay. Gibson or Martin?
Gibson. Well, wait. Oh no, because that would be acoustic. Gibson.
Gibson. Okay. Good man. Elk steak or sushi Noguchi?
Elk steak.
Good choice. All right, last one here, and this is purely Montana. 30-06 or 7mm Magnum?
30-06.
All right, good choice. You did well.
Those 7 mil. Jesse has one of those 7 MMs, and it hurts.
It's not fun.
It just bangs you, man. I mean,
that's
it's a
right.
hard hitter. Yeah.
For those who are listening to the podcast and you're wondering what are these gentlemen going on about, listen, just some hunting rifles and a 7mm Magnum. You know it. That's all I know to say. Well, hey, John, we like to do a little personal history on here. We like to start with just letting people know who you are and where you came from. And I think lots and lots of people, especially in the Vineyard, definitely know your songs. They know Holy and Anointed One. They know Father of Lights. But I would love for them to know some of your, especially early history. Like, where did you grow up? What kind of family did you have?
Oof. So we're going to go dark real quick.
I didn't say dark. I'm just saying.
I grew up in Northern California in would be the San Francisco Bay Area, inland, in the lovely suburbs called Concord. And back then it was the total 60s suburbia, Stingrays. You know, it's all built up now, but I grew up there. My dad was a Navy guy, and so he had been stationed there, and they bought a house, and then when he retired, they stayed there. And so that's how we became Californians. They're all, both my parents are from the South, but.
Did you have a family of faith? There. Was it a family of faith, John?
Well, my mom and a couple of my sisters, my brother. It's a mixed bag. My dad was a complete atheist. Yeah. He didn't like it. He would get violent. He would get violent about it.
Oh, he would be violent about faith.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a spark point.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so when did your life of faith or your life with Jesus become personal and real then?
Man, I mean, you know, I think it's one of those, I think it's one of those things in life I guess you could say at one point, like, you're saved, but as you work it out, it kind of ebbs and flows over your life. My mom made us go to this little Baptist church, and they did this thing called Going Forward. Remember that one?
Yeah, of course.
And you went forward. And so I was 8 years old and, did that. And then some deacon kind of guy took me in the back of this old church building and questioned me on if I knew what I was doing. And I was 8 years old. Yeah.
Okay. Did you get baptized there as well?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't get baptized for years.
Well, I
know. I guess they didn't.
I know that you're a part of the Vineyard. So, like, you're starting out in a family that's very mixed in its faith. Dad is antagonistic. Mom takes you to church. You go forward at 8. When did you fall in with the Vineyard, and how did that happen?
Fast forward, skip forward a whole bunch of stuff. I was in the Coast Guard. And then somehow my brother had moved to Idaho because his in-laws moved there. So we had this great idea, like, hey, let's move to Idaho. So we moved to Idaho, and we literally lived in a shack. And so I would go down to California in the wintertime and work, like pounding nails, or whatever I could do. And Marie's sister and her family went to the Vineyard in San Luis Obispo. So, of course, we visited there, So it was okay. At the time, there was like this little Calvary chapel in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we were kind of leading worship there because they didn't have anybody. And my wife thought that would be a good idea if I did that. So, then, I mean, at some point I was going to go back in the Coast Guard, and because I thought, well, I can retire and have medical the rest of my life. I'll be taken care of. We had a few kids by then and did the test, everything. And the guy calls me up. He goes, hey, your physical's great. Everything's great. But your urine sample came back positive for whatever it is, And I'm like, oh, yeah, because I get hay fever. So I took Sudafed or something. He goes, well, just don't take it for a couple of days, come back. So then I go back home and I talk to Marie about it. So we're like, maybe this isn't what the Lord wants us to do. So kind of sidestep. Right after I got out of the Coast Guard, we moved down by San Luis Obispo and rented a house. And from there, we moved to Idaho. Well, the house we left in Los Osos, which is kind of by Morro Bay there, this guy named Danny Daniels moves from Colorado into that house. And while we were, in Idaho and coming back and forth, he moves across this little town to another house next door to this guy named Randy Rigby. So we eventually, I didn't go back in the Coast Guard and move down there. Well, that was right when Danny was moving back to Colorado. So we moved into the house next to Randy Rigby. Well, we didn't know any of these guys. I'd met Randy a couple times and he didn't like me because he'd heard stories about what a jackwagon I was or whatever. And so I end up like next door to this guy, Randy. And so there was a little vineyard there. There was a vineyard in San Luis Obispo. And so, I just started going there.
Yeah. So you had multiple points of contact is kind of what I'm hearing.
Oh yeah. We bounced around and kind of just landed there without a real plan, which is most of our life. But
yeah. Okay. So a moment ago, you said that you were sort of leading a little worship at a Calvary Chapel up in Coeur d'Alene.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you're not just a believer, but you got a wife, you got kids, you're in church, and you're already like leading worship. I guess that takes me to this spot here. I'm just very interested. When did you start leading worship?
Well, my first worship leading experience, we'll put that in quotes, was like in high school. I went to this thing called Campus Life.
Yeah.
And back then, that was when they could actually go on the school campus, and days were different. And so they said, hey, we want some music. You play the guitar. Can you come and play? They'd have these gatherings with all the different high schools in the area. And I said, sure, And then I had this buddy of mine, Steve. I'm like, dude, look, we got a gig, man. Let's go do this. And so we played at this high school Campus Life thing. So our first worship deal was we played Wooden Ships and Cowgirl in the Sand by Neil Young. That was the only songs we knew. And after that, when we were living down in Los Osos, we went to this little, I don't know if you call it a home. It wasn't a home church. It was this thing. And so there was this book called Rejoice in Jesus Always songbook, little thing with a wire, and it had those, behold what men are in love, things. So I would do that at our little things. And
so that was sort of your initiation into whatever it means to stand in front of people, play guitar, and sing some songs for church.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like did that. And I remember when I was in high school, I know I was young because I couldn't drive. And there was this kind of hippie church in my town that would meet over this place. They had a little restaurant. And I remember riding my bicycle over there and watching, and they'd have a couple people on a stool, and like leading those little chorus things.
Was it like a Jesus People church?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, it was the Jesus. I was young for that. I mean, at least up, where I lived. So yeah, it was always this struggle thing of like, I believe in God, believe in Jesus, but like I would try to go to I won't name the denomination or whatever, but my one of my sisters is a Christian, and I would go to her church and go to like the youth group thing, and of course it was just tough. I have trouble fitting in places anyways, and it was just a tough thing, and they were all talking about what college they were going to go to, and I'm like, I might graduate from high school. And so yeah, but again, obviously back then, what is today didn't even exist. You couldn't have imagined it.
Yeah, that's right. But it sounds to me, John, like you were kind of always a musician.
Oh yeah, I wanted a piano. My grandparents had a piano, and I loved the sound that it made. And so when I was 8, my mom got me a guitar for Christmas, and like 6 free guitar lessons.
Okay, what kind of guitar was it?
It was a K that I wish I had.
Yeah. Was it like an acoustic guitar, or was it one of those K with the F holes?
It was a K acoustic F hole, arch top.
Oh yeah, come on. Yeah.
I wish I still had it.
Where did people buy those guitars back in the day, John?
It's at like a little mom and pop music store in the strip mall.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they also had guitars. I remember at Montgomery Ward's had like their airline guitars or whatever they were called.
Yeah, because wasn't there was kind of a thing where you could, go to a Sears and get a guitar or something, right?
Sears, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the brand Black Diamond guitar strings, and you could get them at Woolworths. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like there was no concept of like, hey, you should change your strings. And the strings on that old guitar, I can remember the wound strings, actually the winding would separate and then they'd slide on the thing. They'd just be shot, and yeah, I banged on that for years, and then my mom got me another one. It was quite a step up. And then I was like 17 or 18. I bought a Guild. I still have the guitar. I have a Guild. I think it's a G50 something. It's this maple Guild, and I bought it for $330 new. Its claim to fame is the song I wrote. It's the guitar I wrote "Holy Anointed One" on. So it's the only guitar that ever paid for itself. The rest of them are just Well, you're just in debt. Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about being a songwriter. I know you're a musician. You started with a K. When did you write songs? I mean, you're like leading worship. Were you always writing songs before you were in church, or did you only start after you got into church? What is that all about?
Started. I mean, Marie says I always made up little songs, goofing around. You had the songbook. Well, I mean, why, write songs? And I really didn't think about it too much until John Wimber asked Randy Rigby to move down to Southern California to help him really get Vineyard music going. And so Randy and I had been neighbors, and we were really close friends. We were like brothers. So we loved like brothers, and we fought like brothers. And so it was one way or the other. It was very little in between time in the middle. So he calls me up and he says, "Hey, we're looking for songs. Have you written any worship songs?" Like, I don't know, I could try. And so, yeah, I just started, trying to think of like how you do that. And
what year would this have been, John?
Murray?
Roughly.
80. Let's see, I moved there 84,
yeah.
85.
Okay. And so Randy says, "Hey, we're looking for songs. We're going to get this thing going."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Okay, I'll try." Do you remember the first song you submitted?
Yeah, I think it was this one. I was "Sing of the Mercies." Yeah, it's this little ditty, but I remember like they had the worship band there at this little church. Was like Randy was in it, and there was this gal Sue Constantini was her name then, another guy. And so like, they were all like real musicians and I wasn't. And so like, it was years before I was even in the worship band there, but I was playing along. And then, I remember before Randy moved down there, he was working on this song, Just Like You Promised. And, so I remember being in his living room, you know, kind of working on that. I'd never really recorded or done any of that kind of stuff. So we drove down there because Marie was going to do the vocal and Harlan was like 9 days old or something like that. And so they're in the studio there. And so she had him turn down the lights because she didn't want anybody looking at her. And, you know, she did that, you know, she did the vocal, you know, holding Harlan, he was this little baby. And then I had all practice. I was going to do the acoustic guitar on it, right? They start, you know, I'm in there and got the guitar and, you know, the click track starts and the headphones, man. I don't even know what it was. I'm like, what is that? You know, and they're like, you know, you're supposed to start. And I'm like, what? You know, and so basically I got fired.
Well,
you know, I didn't get fired outright. It was more of like, yeah, we'll come back to this later.
Somebody else tracked it.
Yeah. So yeah, I got bumped on that, and which wasn't wasn't the last time.
John, I want to circle back to something you said a minute ago, because you said, you know, you're going to this little church, Randy's there, he's in the band or whatever, and there's a couple other people, and you said they were, quote, real musicians. What do you mean by that?
Because, okay, well, you know, those early like Vineyard songs, you needed to know how to play C major seventh and G major seventh and, you know, all these. Remember those chords? And I was like, nah, Neil Young doesn't use those too many, you know. And they had all played, like they had all been in bands and all this stuff. And to be quite honest, it's like I didn't know those. I didn't know what those chords were. I had no clue.
Yeah,
you know. And but I really wanted to play.
Yeah. So I guess I have another question then. This is just super interesting for me. If you don't, at this point, if you don't feel like a real musician, air quotes, and, you know, all of those people are real musicians, then why is Randy asking you to write songs? Did he know that you were a songwriter? What's that dynamic?
I never asked him. I never asked him. He never brought it up. I think it was just, they were looking for songs. And I mean, you got to remember, like back then, there was barely a handful of people. There was John Wimber, Carl Tuttle, Eddie Espinoza, Danny, if I don't know if I mentioned him, and maybe Randy, and a couple other people. There was a handful of people that were involved in that stuff. I got really optimistic the first time Carl Tuttle came up to San Luis Obispo to do a worship workshop, and I watched him play the guitar. And I thought, well, like if he can do it, I can.
Solid burn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So me and Carl have been close ever since.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, there was just a handful of people, and they had put out those 2 LPs way back when. I don't even know if those things still exist. But I had those, and I would sit down and try and learn the songs.
Yeah. Well, I have another question in that vein. I'd love for you to talk to me about being a songwriter, especially a songwriter with a hugely influential song, but then you were also a working man. You worked a job, right? So you write this song, Holy and Anointed One. It's gone around the world, but even when you wrote it, you were a working guy, and you continued to be a working guy after that. Talk to me about that dynamic.
Oh man, when I wrote Holy and Anointed One, Randy had tricked me to move to Orange County because we were living in on the Central Coast, and I was an electrician, and I didn't make a ton of money, but life was good, and so it was like, hey, we'll just come down here for a while and see how you like it. So I had gone from being a journeyman electrician to cleaning carpets in restaurants at night after they closed, living in an apartment, off the 405 freeway. And I was kind of getting close to the end of I'm moving back. I don't like it here, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I'm sitting in this apartment with my guilt, just start singing Your Name Is Like Honey on My Lips, and write this thing. But again, the worship world as it is today didn't even exist really then, just didn't. So there was nothing in your mind well, I can get a job in staff at a church, and I can do this. And, and eventually I got a really good job as an electrician, and I just loved it. I thought that was my place to be. And I couldn't see any reason why I would need to be on staff anywhere.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting.
What would I do all day?
I think it's also just interesting me that you kept being an electrician and you never just said, I'm just going to write songs full time. Are you saying to me that idea, that wasn't even a possibility?
Oh, it never occurred to me.
Yeah.
It was a long time before I would actually get any royalties that were substantial. And even then, actually my wife beat me out completely with the whole publishing thing. But yeah, it was just never enough to go, well, I could just quit and live off of this.
Yeah.
And try to write more. But, part of it back then was remember they did the touching the Father's heart thing.
Yeah.
Well, you only got to do so many of those things. And I was the B-side guy. I think I did 3 of them maybe, and so there was just it wasn't the place for songs, and money was just not, it just never occurred to me that I could actually make a living doing it.
Yeah. Well, I just love, though, there's something for me in your journey that is so maybe prototypical to our Vineyard story, and that I really resonate with, which is kind of this idea that some of our very, very best songs and some of our most well-known songs and some of the songs that have touched people most deeply have come from men and women who, just serving their churches, working jobs, raising their family.
Yeah, I don't know that I thought it through all that much. It just seemed like that's kind of what you do. I knew a few people who were on staff at churches, and but for the most part, I was like, I can do this. And I would actually, there was times when I'd be in the attic running conduit or something, and I would think of I'd be in my head kind of thinking about songs and would like write some lyrics on the drywall, fire drywall up in the attic, and then have to come back and go, what was it I said, and so it was always in my head, but it was never like, if I can just do this enough and then I can like live off of it. It just didn't.
Yeah.
Well, when did CCLI actually?
You would know more about that than me, even.
I know. Like John Wimber would have these meetings like once a year with a bunch of writers, and I remember like one of the guy from CCLI showed up and did his spiel about, well, this is what's going on. Da da da. I'm sure it was in the 90s, and I still didn't know what he was talking about. And then as a kid, I kind of showed these graphs and da da da, and again, it was at the very beginning of that. And I remember walking out with Andy Park, and I said, "Boy, it's going to get dangerous from here out." And he said, "Well, why is that?" And I said, "Because there's going to be money involved. It's money involved. It's all changed now, And but even then, I used to take my fall royalty every year, and that was like Christmas for the kids. And then, and it was always, it was a few $100.
Yeah. That's great. I love that story.
And I remember one time driving to Anaheim to get my check, because it was like a couple days of Christmas, and, we didn't make that much money back then. And I remember my check was like $960 or something. Because I didn't even wait till I got home. I pulled over, like, I got to see what Christmas is going to look like. And I'm like, well, they're not going to, And so I actually called the office on the next day. I said, hey, is this right? Think about it. It was $900. That's not enough to go. But it was like, they must have made a mistake, and this can't be,
Yeah. So part of what I hear in your story is you were never chasing a career.
I don't think so.
That's good.
I am, I just never. Well, look at me. I'm not a face you'd want as your poster child for anything.
I don't know, John. You got that look, big dog.
Yeah, I don't know that. I guess people do it for a career now. I don't know how they do it. There's folks to do it. I guess there's something in me that maybe it is old school. It just says, I just can't do that, because then you're motivated by, hey, I got the mortgage payment coming up. So I never had to be I was motivated by other things like jealousy and ambition and competition, and but it was never a paycheck. I was motivated by darker things to write.
Well, John, now that you've come through a bunch of stuff, what would you like to say to worship leaders who are maybe coming up now? Because a lot of them listen to this. Our churches are filled with maybe some worship leaders who are in high school and they're just starting off, and maybe they lead one song a weekend. And then there's probably some other worship leaders in our movement who are 24 and they're leading whole services. And then we've got some worship leaders who are in their late 20s and 30s who are maybe even on staff, and, just people who have entered into this thing that we called leading worship, but just in a much different era than when you started. And I would just love for you to be, I don't know, father elder to us here for a moment.
Yeah, it's, again, like talking about this story, I know I'm digressing a little bit, but young worship leaders are in a way more vulnerable, almost dangerous place than I was when I was that age. Because there's this whole basically industry in front of them that's modeling this. and then you go, so I want to succeed. I want to be like that, or I want to do this. And it's really tough because one, nobody's telling them, hey, the odds are against you, and you don't want to do that. So I was listening to this Jordan Peterson thing, and if you've ever listened to him, it's one of his big things he always harps on is chaos and order.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big thing. One of the stories he was talking about was when they were bringing back the ark and it starts to tip and the priest reaches out and touches it and dies. And I've always read that story and thought, why? I mean, the guy was just trying to help. I mean, it's why? And, God, why are you so petty? And what's, would you have a bad day? And so he's talking about that story. And then he said this, he said, there are things that you touch at your peril, regardless of your intentions. In thinking about what was in me, as a vineyard guy and kind of exploring this thing through worship. Worship has become so, in some sense, so commercialized, and so, it's become this thing. It's almost become a thing that, we do it to draw people. It's, part of this whole system. The idea of worship was, again, congregational. I mean, because, I have all kinds of ideas about creativity and music that go way outside of Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I also think some of those things fit in Sunday mornings. But the idea of the gathered people of God, it is this thing that we can touch at our own peril, regardless of our intentions. So we can have really good intentions about worship, and because we don't immediately die physically and or spiritually that we know of, we think we're doing good and we're just helping. We're helping God. It's we're helping people, we're doing this, and we're helping him. And it can really remains to be seen in the future how this worship culture is all going to play out. To go back to your question before, it's what does a guy do who's 25 and he's on staff at a church now, and life is good? I mean, until the 1-9, and they start.
Yeah, that's right, right.
But what is so? And then what happens when you're 55? You got a couple kids, one's ready to go to college, and the church decides you're too old. And it can be at least proposed as an idea that 20 years from now there's going to be a lot of that happening.
Yeah, unless our church culture has some sort of radical shift that it doesn't look like it's going to have.
Yeah, and so so I think young people just need to realize, man, there's things that you touch at your own peril, regardless of your intentions. There's things that you go after that seem good, that might not be good in the long run, regardless of your intentions.
Well, just to reference back to that story, the one out of Samuel.
Yeah.
If I remember right, I think if you back up a couple chapters, basically Israel has this ark. It's like the place where God rests or whatever. Yeah. And, a bunch of stuff goes down. They lose the ark. The Philistines have it. Finally, the Philistines decide they need to get rid of it. Isn't this when they get the tumors or whatever? And they're we got to...
They got the 1-9.
Yeah, they got the 1-9, and they decide we got to get rid of this. We got to get rid of this ark. And they send it back to Israel by placing it on a cart. And they basically just smack the ox on the butt and say, get on out of here. And so Israel gets their ark back, right? And then it hangs out at a few locations. I think one of the guys' names is Obed-Edom. And David sees that...
he gets all of a sudden he wins the lottery.
Yeah, so David sees that Obed-Edom is getting blessed because the ark is there. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting because David's we're going to bring this thing home. And one of the things you realize when you read the text a little bit close is when they try to bring it out of his house up to Israel, what they do, their first mistake is they start handling the presence of the Lord the way the Philistines did. They put it on a cart and they have the ox drag it rather than slide the poles through it and carry it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's again, it's just exactly what you were saying again. There are certain things, no matter what your intentions are, how you touch it matters. I think that's part of the point of this story.
Yeah. And I think, again, I mean, it's like, in kind of preparing for our little talk, I thought, well, man, I don't even know what's going on in the quote unquote worship world. I'm going to do some study. But then I said, you know what? I'm just going to look at videos of people that are complaining about contemporary worship. Let me see what they have to say. You know me, I'm a bit backwards on things. I'm going to see what these, instead of what people are tooting their horn, I'll go see what and then watching some of these, I'm like going, you guys are smarter than this to have such a bad argument. Because it's just like, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't think so. And so, again, having come from the era when you had an organ or a piano player lady, and that was kind of it, and the guy up front, and first and last stanza, and to the whole wars about, hey man, the hippies have invaded the church and blah blah blah, and then, my gosh, I can remember one of those conferences, and I was leading worship. I had just got this Rickenbacker 12-string guitar, and I just was, because I was a Tom Petty freak. And I remember being on the stage and John Wimber walking by me and giving me the worst look on earth. Like, what are you doing leading with an electric guitar? Like, it's cool, so just having been those things was like, well, you don't lead with electric guitar. You lead on acoustic guitar, and you have the pastel shirt with like the guy with the polo pony on it. And, you know what I mean? And, and you put on patchouli oil and whatever. And so that era, and so I remember all those, changes. And so you don't want to be like this guy that goes, hey man, you have to watch everything and God's going to kill you and, all this. But there has to be this thing of like fear of the Lord.
That's not a phrase that I run into often these days, John.
Yeah, no, it's not a popular one. It's like the thing is like, whether you're going to sing a song that has wrath in it or not, And so there's some people that will say, well, actually that doesn't exist. And then then you have other people that think that it's something they can wield at their own discretion, the wrath of God on people. It's like, I don't know. It's just this thing. And so I'm just kind of wondering, this thing we call contemporary worship with all of its bells and its whistles and its glitz and its glamour, and we justify it because the seats are filled. I just wonder if in the long run, we're touching something at our own peril and losing the mystery of it, and we talk about the presence of God and all this stuff. But then again, you look in the Bible when God showed up, and it was a little bit nerve-wracking. So I wonder without, like, I never want to be the guy that goes, this all sucks and it's all, burn it all down, which I'd like to burn some of it down. But so I just wonder if in the long run, it's like, conversations like where can it go from here?
Yeah.
Where can you possibly go?
Well, when you were just talking a moment ago, it reminds me of something David Ruth said many years ago with respect to worship. He asked the question, is God listening?
Yeah.
Which I thought that kind of is a great way of putting your finger on it,
Yeah. And I hope, you talk about young people, I hope there's a generation that raises that starts asking these questions. Why are we doing this? Like, what is it? Is there something that we're missing here? Because if we're just shooting for, man, I need to get a good gig, and this can work out for a while, and maybe I can get my songs published, And we both know that doesn't, but that doesn't really mean a lot.
Yeah. I mean, like if it's a good quarter, I can take my family to the buffet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like eat your chicken and I just wonder when I look at, younger people, what their future's going to look like, because unlike some articles on contemporary worship, for the most part, young people they're just trying to learn some songs. They're just trying to lead worship. They're just trying to serve their church, or they're just trying to figure out, how to do it good, how to do it better, how to, how to get through this thing. And so I think, there's most of them have like really good intention.
John, let me ask you another question here that's sort of in the put on your father elder hat again. You've lived so much of the Vineyard experience, and you've been such a huge contributor to it. I'd love to know what you think our sort of like shared Vineyard contribution to the worship space is.
Can you ask me that in a different way?
Yeah, like what is the gift that we bring to worship? Our little tribe. I mean, we're not the gift. We don't have all the market share on it. Don't even want to. But we do bring something. You're one of the founders in many ways. At least that's sort of the brain space you take up in my mind. I would just love to know what you think our gift is in the worship world. Or what is it that we offer that's unique? Or what is it that God is asking us to be and to keep on being?
Yeah, I think one is because in the early days, I mean, we were historically, not that we were innovators. I mean, we weren't alone in this thing, but we really helped shape what worship looks like today. So what was unique about us then has been multiplied, over the globe. And that's good and it's bad. One of the things that's really hard to multiply, though, I think for the most part, when we're leading worship, as a worship leader, even as a songwriter, even as a guy who's had his name on the brochure, name on the overhead, whatever, it's like we're still community. We are still family with the people in the chairs. Mm. It's not, and for the most part, it's not a show. It's not entertainment. We are there to meet with one another. We are there, to meet with God. And so the idea that one, I think that carries over was originally like John's idea of like simple song, like simple. That was brilliant because anybody that had a Mel Bay chord book could play any of those songs around the world. But this idea of just simplicity, that we just come together with no pretense, with no, maybe you don't know who I think I am. And, just presenting this big thing that, as a worship community, we're not separate from the people who sweep the floors afterward community, or the people who clean the bathrooms community.
That's a great word.
Make coffee, or people who put up chairs community.
Yeah, that's a great word.
We're not separate. We're not better. We just do this thing because somehow God's given us this love of music and this desire to do this thing. And I think that, again, I don't know if it's unique. I don't know, but I know that that's our DNA. That's part of who we are. It's like we're just another part of the community, of God, and we meet together. We do this thing. And we play these songs. It's just a tough one. It's not, again, it's like, how do you balance out? Look, I'm Adam Russell. I play the guitar this way. I sing this way. This is my unique thing. And when I'm not, and I'm not trying to be anybody else. That's a thing. Like, how do you get young people to go, look, you need to be how you've been made. You need to look like you look and sound like you sound and play like you play. And not that you should be bad at it, but not try to be the guy that's on the YouTube video that's got 7 million views.
Yeah. I mean, part of what I hear you saying, John, is it really does resonate in that world of the word family. You used it earlier, just a moment ago. And kind of everything you've been saying here is an expression of family. I love the way you framed it a moment ago. Yeah, we lead worship. We're on the stage. Our voices come out of microphones, but we're not different or better than the person who sweeps the floor or cleans the bathroom. And for me, that's a family word. And even what you were saying just a second ago about you be you. You sing like you play like you. That's a family word too, because in our own families, we let our children be who they are, right? I hope we do.
I hope we do.
I hope we do. Yeah.
And I think I think, again, because, you and I, we've been in a lot of meetings trying to figure out where we were, where we're at, where we're going, all this stuff. And, what's unique in this. And I just know that, things that I've experienced in the vineyard, an example would be, okay, here's a family example. It's been several years ago now, but there was a national retreat conference in Anaheim. You were there. It was the one that they inadvertently recorded.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, exactly. They pulled a fast one on me.
Yeah. And so was that one, whenever that was.
Yeah.
And I don't know if one thing I noticed is that back in the green room before the sessions, like everybody was back there, like all the musicians. And so it wasn't like, hey, we're playing or we're this or like everybody hung out together, and it didn't matter. And it was and there was no hierarchy. There was no stars. We just hung out like a bunch of people who really, really enjoyed being together.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, what songs have you been written lately? Or it was just, we just hung out and threw fruit at each other and laughed and hugged and cried and prayed. See, those kind of things, which, a lot of people don't get to see, is what I think's very unique about the Vineyard Movement when it comes to worship leaders and songwriters. It's just like the worship leaders retreats, and we've been to a ton of those. It's the same thing. It's that you have people who just love being together and love playing songs together and hanging out together. one of the gems of Vineyard Movement, of the worship community, is that it really is, for the most part, I mean, we're people, so there's always that. But for the most part, it's just like this community of people that love each other. They want to serve their churches. They want to write songs. They want to write good songs. They want to get along. They want. I mean, put it this way. From my experience, from those conferences, from like the worship leaders retreats, is that what the Vineyard has with its worship community is a group of people who all want to go somewhere, and they all want to go somewhere together. Mm. That's unique.
That's a good word.
Especially in a world where everybody's after that top 10 CCLI market. The Vineyard has just has this group of people, and it really is a legacy. It's something that when you talk about young people, we need to bring them into that and like point it out to them. Go, look, this is like, it's not a clique, it's not a cult, there's not insiders and outsiders. This is like a family, and we'll all go to the pizza place and play songs and hang out and do this thing. And so what, I think needs to be carried on in our movement is that. Look, like, this is like really good. And you don't get this everywhere.
Amen.
And if you get to write a great song, we all want to be with you in that. We all want to go, way to go. That's this family thing. And that's what I hope is getting, along with the other stuff, you need to know how to take apart the drum sheet. Put it. Everybody needs to know that. Vineyard is really unique in the, it's been, a few decades now, is that we have all these different people with all these different influences, with all these different styles, with all these different songwriting styles. We just have so many different expressions that nobody has. There's nobody of a church, centered, movement centered thing. Nobody has what we have. And I'm not saying that, like we're pride and, I'm just saying it's just this very unique thing. If we can keep that, if we can keep young people, to go, man, you be part of your church, be part of your family, you're part of this movement, and just help where you can help. I think that'll go a long way.
Yeah, me too. Well, I love so much what you just shared there. Yeah, and I hope we can hang on to it. A moment ago, John, you were talking about how musically diverse we are as a little group in the Vineyard, and it just reminded me of something that I was working on. This has been a couple months ago. I was writing an email to Casey Coram and another friend in Nashville, just trying to explain kind of who we are in the Vineyard and from a musical side, and we had a little bit of an email thread going. And after a few emails between the three of us, one of the things we sort of discovered is that, at least here in the United States, in the Vineyard, we have like these 4 buckets that kind of keep showing up in terms of our musical styles. And there's probably even more, but there's just 4 that keep coming up all the time. And so there's what we might call, modern worship, modern contemporary worship, things that you might hear even on Christian radio. There's a certain segment of the Vineyard that's kind of like that. And then there's another segment of the Vineyard that's kind of Americana roots worship, which is very unique. You just don't hear that. And then there's also this emerging like Vineyard soul / black gospel kind of a thing that has really emerged in the last 5 years. Now, in the last couple of years, we have this new segment that's Lavinia, and it's Spanish or it's bilingual. I guess I'm just telling that story because I already knew this was there, but it's funny how unless you articulate it and name it and talk about it, sometimes what's right around you, it's harder to see. Mm-hmm. I just became really thankful again. It's like, oh, this is really cool. Like, from the tip of Maine to the edges of California, we have these really diverse and unique expressions in the same church movement. And that just felt like a gift.
It is, again, so I say, when you step back and you look at it and you go, okay, this is kind of what's come out of this, and again, and so if we saying, Vineyard, us, if we can just let that stuff grow and, and flower and bloom without comparisons or competition or going, those are the guys are the soul guys, or those guys are the, pop guys, and kind of go, no, we all need to, and part of that is, I go back to this idea is that we were created with an individual gift and with an individual flavor. And so the way I look at it, for me, like, everybody doesn't have to look at it this way, but I go, oh, look, I've had these conversations with Casey. We've had a gazillion of them, it's like, okay, I was made to create this kind of thing. Casey Quorum's made to create a whole different thing. And I would not expect him to be like me, or, he certainly doesn't expect me to be like him. But part of what needs to happen is, again, the whole thing of like finding your voice or whatever you call it. It's called, like, I was called to make like this kind of box. Again, this is just how I process it. If I strive to make a contemporary sounding radio worship song that isn't how I was made, it wasn't my gift, then I'm betraying my gift for an advantage of what? There's plenty of people trying to write those songs.
And I just want to reflect back to you some of the references you've made in our conversation up to this point. Like, the musical name that's popped up out of your mouth more than any other name is like Neil Young and Tom Petty, right? Even in this conversation. Yeah. So it's, we see your home base. Those are the things that have been an impression on you.
And so, so is it okay? I know this is kind of a rambling conversation, but is it okay to tell young songwriters and worship leaders, hey man, you got to find out who you are. You got to find out what your gift is.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, you got to find, because if you're chasing this other thing your whole life and that's not your gift, you're going to be really not happy.
Yeah, I think that's a good word, John.
It's like, so what is your thing? What's your landing place? And as a movement and as a worshiping movement, as a musical movement, again, going back to all these different styles and stuff, what will really make that fly is if everybody starts going, man, what's my voice? What's my gift? What do I have to say? What does God uniquely put in me? Because there's, again, I think it's right and it's wrong to go, look, man, we're just here to serve the church, man. You got to lay yourself down. You need to do this thing. That comes with its own tyranny. It comes with its own dark side.
Yeah, there's a sense in which, we do want to raise up servants, right? Like, we want to raise up people who are humble-hearted and all that kind of thing. But it's back to your idea of family. Like, a family lets people be who they are. It's both.
Yeah, and so you can go to churches all over Vineyard, all over the U.S., and everything's kind of a little bit different. Even people take the same song, it all just kind of sounds different. And if it's true, going back to the beginning, that God has blessed the Vineyard Movement with this thing called worship and with this thing called songs, that, if that's still true, then it's true for our generation, it's true for your generation, it's true for the next generation. I don't think he's going to take it away.
Amen.
Can we make mistakes with it? Yeah, we made a lot of mistakes. Tons. But we don't know where this whole thing, this whole worship thing is going. And I've seen it shift enough to where I go, okay, well, this thing, verse, chorus, bridge, build the bridge back up, repeat the chorus big, and then whoa-who's out. That will run its course. I mean, why complain about It's like that'll and so you don't know where it's going to go. There's a whole movement of people that are like kind of like in Anglican churches that are kind of doing like folk meets, Americana meets hymns. There's all kinds of shifts, but like there's guys that are really gifted at a certain thing. That's like their voice. And so I think it's just important when we kind of go, serving the church doesn't mean you are not you. Yeah, man, it's a thing God given us. Music is, as you know, the idea of creativity and consciousness and this thing that music plays and then that it does to humans. It's a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is. Well, John, I want to ask you one more question here, just as we wrap up, and it's the question we've been asking everybody at the end of the podcast for this season. I just want to know what you're dreaming about these days. Do you have a dream that's alive in your own heart right now?
Well, I'll tell you what I am doing is I've been thinking about how to do it for a while, and I'm actually archiving everything I've ever written.
Okay, so what does that mean? Tell me about that.
All my demos, all my little things I've recorded, like stuff I did on like a, iPad, all these just crummy little things. I'm archiving them.
Okay, so you're going in your studio and recording them.
Well, I'm using like stuff that I did on.
Okay, you're making a place for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I talked to a couple guys trying to figure out how to do it. I started doing a little on Facebook. So like I made this like YouTube channel and I'm just dumping. It's not, I think it's public. I don't know, but I started dumping all this stuff on there and making like little lyric videos.
John, tell everybody what the name of the YouTube channel that you're documenting all this into is called.
It's called John Barnett Archives, Demos, and Lost Tracks.
Archives, Demos, and Lost Tracks. That's good.
And so I'm just dumping everything. I'm making like lyric videos, and there's I've been leaving the typos because my internet's so slow. Anyways, and the reason I did it, and I'm gonna tell you this, it's like in thinking about some of the stuff, all the stuff we talked about today. One of the things, Sunday was the first time I picked up an instrument in the last 2 months. Like I did a hard reset. Not doing anything. I'm reevaluating everything. One of the things I was thinking, again, talking about like what it is we were made for is I'm thinking if there's anything I can leave my kids and anything I can leave my grandkids and my great grandkids, and if God doesn't come back and the internet's still around, my great grandkids, is these songs. Like I can leave a piece of me for them when I'm gone.
I love that.
And then so it's like I told Marie the other day, I go, hopefully, someday, maybe our grandchildren, our great grandchildren will listen to one of these and it will help them. It will help them see what it's like to process life through following Jesus.
Man, John, I love that. I love that idea.
And so that's what I've just been trying to do. It's like I'm gonna grab all this stuff, no matter how crummy and how crappy. And I have one little demo I did in roosters in the background for the whole thing. But I just want to leave it for them. I want them to know the songs that I wrote when I was going through the death of our daughter. I want to leave that. And I'm not dying, by the way, that I know of. Just to say that I anytime soon. But yeah, that's kind of like what my dream is now. I'm digging through this stuff. I got this old computer going a couple of months ago that was kind of dead. And I found all these just old little demos in there, and I stuff I completely forgot about. So I'm trying to grab all that stuff and just archive it, again, so I can just leave it. I'm not trying to, I think that's enough. I think that's enough, to do with a gift, and a life of creating and stuff. And so it's kind of a crazy idea. I'm gonna try to put stuff on a couple other hard drives and give my kids access to the page and that's kind of what I'm doing these days.
Man, John, I love it. That's a beautiful idea. Well, hey, thanks for giving me some time and talking to us.
Sorry, it wasn't very straightforward.
Whatever, dude. You're great. Thanks for not just what you shared this afternoon, but thanks for just the way that you and Marie have, just given so much to the Vineyard and given so much to Vineyard Worship and, really opened doors for so many people like me personally, and then so many others like me. And I just want to say, I know where it came from and I appreciate it.
Well, I remember in Florida.
Yeah.
Florida, not only, I told somebody the other day the story about, it was Casey, I told him the story about when Marie met you. I remember, just thought about this. I remember we were doing that conference, and I remember sitting in the back praying. I told you this. And I actually said at the thing, I said, the Lord showed me, which I don't say that very often, it's in good hands. And it was, remember you brought your little gang of, misfits down there and crazy yoders and where'd that
that's right.
from? And so I have to trust that for not just your generation, but the generation after you. It's in good hands. It's going to be okay. It's going to be good. But I think it's okay. I'm finding again, we never learned how to grow old in this. We never learned how to become not necessarily a father, but how do you grow old? How do you go, you know what? Those guys are going to do this. They're going to do it their way. They're going to figure it out. They're going to sort it out. And they need to, you need to let them saddle it and ride it. I think that God's into it enough to where he'll course correct.
Amen.
He'll do it. He doesn't need me to do it. Amen. I can just be cool.
Amen. Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Listen, you heard it here first. These are some of the original stories, and you should go to John's YouTube. Find it out. His archives, demos, recreations, everything he's archiving. All right, people. Peace.
Hi everyone, this is Melissa Keller, Events Director for Vineyard Worship. If you've been enjoying the podcast, I've got a couple of ways you could really help us. First of all, review the podcast on iTunes or the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media, Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.